He was staring at me again. Not the casual glance one might give a friend across the room, but a look that lingered far too long, sharp and unsettling. We were all gathered around the table, my best friend, her husband, and a few others, laughing over a silly memory from college. Yet, I felt his eyes burning into me. When I looked up, his smile faltered, and he quickly turned to refill his wine glass, but the damage was already done. There was something in that look, something far too intense, far too personal. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. He was just being friendly, perhaps a little awkward. But then I remembered it was not the first time. Lately, he had been hovering near me more often, laughing a bit too loudly at my jokes, touching my arm with just enough pressure to make me uneasy. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but the truth was beginning to unravel inside me. That night, as I walked to my car alone, I could still feel his eyes on me, like an invisible hand, cold and heavy on the back of my neck. Something was not right, and I could no longer ignore it. I met Clara during our freshman year of college. She was the kind of person who could light up a room without even trying. Her laughter was infectious, her confidence effortless, and her kindness unwavering. We became inseparable almost instantly, bonded by long nights of studying, spontaneous road trips, and whispered secrets shared under blankets. Even after graduation, when our lives took different directions, we remained as close as ever. I could always count on Clara, and she could always count on me. When she introduced me to David, I was genuinely happy for her. He seemed charming, attentive, and deeply in love with her. Clara deserved someone who cherished her, and it appeared she had found exactly that. They met at a mutual friend's engagement party, and within a year, they were married. I was one of her bridesmaids, standing proudly beside her as she walked down the aisle. During the reception, David made a short speech, and he looked at her like she was the center of his world. I believed in them. I trusted them both. Over time, we all settled into our adult lives. Clara and David moved into a beautiful house just outside the city, and I visited often. Sunday brunches became a regular thing, and sometimes we would meet for dinner or celebrate birthdays together. It felt natural, comforting, like an extension of our college days. I never questioned my presence in their lives. I was family. It was during one of those brunches, maybe a year after their wedding, that I first noticed something odd. Clara had gone into the kitchen to grab more coffee, and I stayed back at the table with David. As we chatted casually about work and weekend plans, he complimented my dress. At first, it seemed harmless. David was always polite, but then he said something else, something that clung to me long after the moment passed. You always wear the kind of colors that bring out your eyes, he said, his tone low, almost thoughtful. I laughed awkwardly, brushing it off. I thanked him and changed the subject. Still, something about the way he looked at me unsettled me. It was too focused, too deliberate. I did not tell Clara. It felt too insignificant, too easy to misinterpret. Maybe I was just being overly sensitive. Maybe he was simply trying to be nice. That was what I told myself. But small moments like that began to happen more frequently. I would be talking to Clara about something mundane, her latest project at work, or a new recipe she wanted to try, and I would glance over and find David watching me, silent and unreadable. Sometimes, his eyes would drop to my hands or my lips before he realized I had noticed, and he would quickly turn away. Once, during a game night at their house, we were all sitting on the floor playing cards. Clara had gone to the bathroom, and David shifted slightly closer to me. I barely noticed until I felt his knee press against mine. It was not accidental. He did not move it. My entire body stiffened, but I forced a smile and scooted back slightly. He pretended nothing had happened. I told myself I was imagining it. David had never said or done anything explicitly inappropriate. Maybe I was just misreading friendly gestures. Maybe I was uncomfortable because I was single, and the closeness of their marriage made me more aware of my own loneliness. I created excuses, each more elaborate than the last, trying to convince myself there was no real issue. Still, the feeling lingered. Another time, Clara and I had gone shopping together while David stayed home. When we returned, I went inside first while Clara stayed in the car to finish a call. David was in the kitchen. I greeted him casually and set the bags down, expecting Clara to follow any moment. He turned to me with a strange smile and said, "You always look so happy around her. It is beautiful." I paused, unsure how to respond. "She makes me happy," I said simply. "She makes everyone happy," he replied, but his eyes never left mine. There was a long silence before Clara walked in, cheerful and oblivious. I could not shake the chill I felt. It was around that time I began avoiding situations where I might be alone with him. If Clara invited me over, I would make sure to arrive only when she was there. If she stepped out of the room, I found reasons to follow. I did not want to confront what I was beginning to feel, because admitting it out loud would mean tearing a crack into something I had held sacred for so long, our friendship. And still, I said nothing. One afternoon, Clara invited me to a charity dinner David's company was sponsoring. It was a formal event, and we both spent hours getting ready. Clara looked stunning in her navy gown, and I wore a deep green dress that she had helped me pick out. We laughed and posed for photos in her living room before heading out. At the venue, David met us near the entrance. He took Clara's hand and kissed her cheek, then turned to me. "You look breathtaking," he said. His voice was too soft, his gaze too intense. I laughed it off, muttering a thank you, but Clara looked up at him with a smile, proud of her husband's kindness. I smiled too, but I felt cold inside. Later that evening, as we stood near the bar waiting for our drinks, David leaned close and whispered, "You really have no idea, do you?" I turned to him, confused. "No idea about what?" He just smiled and took a sip of his drink, then walked away as if nothing had happened. That night, I lay in bed replaying every moment, every word, every glance. I told myself it was nothing. I had to be reading too much into it. David loved Clara. He was just awkward, maybe too familiar, but he had never crossed a line. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe it. Because anything else would mean choosing between my own comfort and the woman who had been my best friend for over a decade. And I was not ready to face that choice. Not yet. The first message came late one night. I was in bed, my room dimly lit by the soft glow of my bedside lamp, scrolling through emails before turning in. My phone buzzed with a new notification. It was a text from David. You looked beautiful today. That color on you was unforgettable. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I had not seen him or Clara that day. We had not spoken since the charity event a week ago. There was no reason for him to be texting me, and certainly not a message like that. I did not respond. I placed the phone face down and turned off the lamp, but sleep refused to come. My thoughts twisted and turned, tangling themselves into knots. The next morning, I convinced myself it was a one-time thing, a moment of impulsive flattery that meant nothing. Still, I took a screenshot and saved it to a hidden folder on my computer. It did not stop there. A few days later, another message came. Do you ever think about what your life would be like if you had met someone else first? I froze. The words felt too loaded, too specific. I responded, finally, keeping it vague and polite. Not sure what you mean. The reply came quickly. Forget I said anything. Just a late-night thought. I showed Clara's contact photo on my phone and stared at it for a long time. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to send the messages and ask her to explain her husband's behavior. But every time I imagined her reaction, my stomach clenched. Would she believe me? Would she think I was misreading his words? Or worse, would she think I was encouraging it? I started avoiding every opportunity to be around him. When Clara invited me to dinner, I declined. When she called and said David had picked up pastries for me from that bakery I liked, I thanked her but never collected them. I gave excuses, kept my distance, and prayed that things would settle down. But David did not take the hint. One afternoon, I was walking through the local park, headphones in, soaking in the calm breeze and soft rustle of leaves, when I noticed someone sitting on a nearby bench. It was David. He looked up and smiled as if he had just happened to be there by chance. I did not expect to see you here, I said, voice cautious. He stood, brushing off his jeans. I needed some air. Long week. I come here sometimes to think. I gave a polite nod, intending to keep walking, but he fell into step beside me. I have been thinking about you a lot lately, he said after a few silent minutes. I stopped walking. David, I think this needs to stop. He looked at me, eyes wide with a kind of wounded confusion. What do you mean? You know what I mean. You are married to Clara. You are my friend's husband. This is not appropriate. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think I do not know that? You think I chose this? I did not respond. I turned and walked away without another word. That night, I wrote everything down. The messages, the park encounter, the lingering looks and too long touches. I documented it all. I dated each entry, attached screenshots, and saved voice memos when the memories felt too fresh to capture in words. I was no longer brushing anything off. I was protecting myself. When Clara called 2 days later and asked why I had been distant, I told her I had been overwhelmed with work. She sounded hurt but did not press the issue. I hated lying to her. She deserved to know, but I did not know how to tell her. A week later, she invited me to her birthday dinner. It was a small gathering, just a few close friends at a restaurant she loved. I could not say no, not without raising suspicion. I told myself I could handle a couple of hours. I told myself David would behave in public. He did not. Halfway through the evening, while Clara was in the restroom, David leaned in and said quietly, "You are the only person who really sees me." I stiffened. "Stop this." He smiled, unfazed. "You cannot pretend forever. You feel it too." I stood and excused myself, pretending I needed fresh air. Outside, I took deep breaths, trying to steady my pulse. The lights from the restaurant flickered against the glass windows, distorted by the tears I refused to let fall. When I returned, Clara looked at me with concern. "Are you all right?" I nodded. "Just a bit warm. Needed air." She touched my arm gently. "You have seemed off lately. I hope everything is okay." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "Your husband is obsessed with me, and I am scared." But the words never came. Instead, I said, "I am just tired. Work has been a lot." Later that night, David texted again. I meant what I said. "We have a connection." I blocked his number. The following weekend, he emailed me. A long, rambling message about feelings he had tried to suppress, about dreams he had where I was there instead of Clara, about how he wished he had met me first. I deleted the message but saved a copy. I added it to my growing folder of evidence. I started checking my locks more often. I changed my morning routine. I made sure no one followed me when I left my building. Paranoia seeped into my every thought, every decision. I had never felt so watched, so exposed. When Clara asked again why I had been distant, I told her gently that I needed some space. She sounded hurt. She said she did not understand, that she missed me. I wanted to tell her that I missed her too, but I could not be near her while her husband kept trying to insert himself into my life in ways that made my skin crawl. Then one day, Clara showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in my doorway, arms crossed, her expression wary. "Is something going on between you and David?" The question stunned me. "No," I said quickly, horrified. Then why is he acting so strange? Why are you avoiding me? What is happening? I hesitated. I was not ready. I was not sure if she was asking because she suspected him or because she suspected me. I told her I did not know what she was talking about. She left looking more confused than ever. That night, I opened the folder on my computer and read every word, every message. I had proof. I had kept it all. But I still did not know how to use it without destroying her. David was not just a man with an obsession. He was a shadow growing longer by the day, creeping slowly into every corner of my life. And Clara, the person I had trusted more than anyone, remained caught in the middle, blind to what was happening or unwilling to see. I knew something had to change. I could not carry this alone much longer. The silence was beginning to hurt more than the truth. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of day that should have been uneventful, predictable. I had taken the afternoon off work to run errands and had stopped by a quiet cafe near my apartment. It was nearly empty, soft music playing in the background, the smell of cinnamon and roasted coffee beans hanging in the air. I was seated near the window, a book open in front of me, my mind slowly unwinding. I did not see him until he was standing beside my table. David. I looked up, startled. He smiled, too calm, too familiar. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice low but tense. He shrugged. I saw you come in. Thought we could talk. I do not think that is a good idea. He sat down anyway, across from me, completely ignoring my discomfort. His eyes scanned my face, and I felt the walls closing in. There was no one else near us, no staff nearby. I need you to listen, he said. Please. Just let me speak. I hesitated. I should have walked out. But something in his tone, something in the cold intensity of his expression, froze me in place. I cannot stop thinking about you, he said, voice quiet but firm. It has been like this for months. I try to focus on Clara, I try to be normal, but every time I see you, it gets worse. You are in my head all the time. I did not respond. I could barely breathe. I think I married the wrong person, he continued. I care about her, but I do not feel alive with her. When I am around you, I feel understood. I feel seen. This is wrong, I said, trying to steady my voice. You are married. You made vows. I am not going to betray Clara. His expression hardened. But what if it is not betrayal? What if it is fate? What if we are supposed to be together? I stood up quickly. Stop it, David. I am leaving. He grabbed my wrist, not hard, but firm enough to make my heart leap. Just think about it, he said. If you tell Clara, she will never believe you. She will think you seduced me. She will choose me. She always does. I pulled my arm away, shaking with a mixture of fear and rage. I walked out of that cafe without looking back, but his words followed me. At home, I locked the door behind me and collapsed onto the floor. I had never felt so trapped in my life. I was terrified, not just of David, but of what would happen if I spoke the truth. He was not just obsessed. He was calculating. He knew how to twist things. He knew how to plant doubt. And he was right about one thing. Clara might not believe me. That night, I could not eat. I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face across the table, heard his voice whispering his sick vision of love. I kept replaying his warning. She will choose me. She always does. The next morning, Clara texted me. She wanted to talk. She said she missed me. I stared at her message, tears welling in my eyes. I had spent years cherishing our friendship. She had been there through heartbreaks, job changes, family drama. And now I had to shatter that bond. But I could not carry this burden any longer. I had tried to stay silent to protect her. I had tried to ignore his advances to keep the peace. I had documented everything to feel some control. None of it had worked. David had crossed a line. I had to choose between silence and self-respect, between guilt and truth. The next day, I asked Clara to meet me. I told her it was important. We agreed on a park bench we used to frequent years ago when our friendship was still fresh and uncomplicated. I arrived early, my phone clutched in my hand, a folder of digital evidence tucked away in my email. She showed up with her usual warmth, arms open, a smile on her face that faded quickly when she saw mine. What is going on? She asked. You look pale. I took a deep breath and forced myself to meet her eyes. There is something I need to tell you. Something I have been keeping from you because I did not know how. Because I was afraid. She blinked, confused. What is it? I hesitated. The words felt heavy, like lifting a stone from deep underwater. But I spoke. It is about David. Her body tensed. What about him? He has been crossing lines. 4 months. It started with compliments, then messages. He shows up where I am, sends emails, says things that make me feel unsafe. I have tried to ignore it, I have tried to push him away, but it is getting worse. Her eyes narrowed. Are you saying he is hitting on you? I am saying he is obsessed with me, and he made that very clear yesterday at the cafe. She shook her head. No, that cannot be right. I have proof, I said quickly, opening my phone. Messages, screenshots, emails. I saved everything because I knew you might not believe me. She stared at me in silence as I handed her the phone. Her eyes flicked across the screen, growing wider with each message. Her hand trembled slightly as she scrolled, reading every word he had sent me. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. But her face was unreadable. How long has this been going on? She asked quietly. Almost a year, I said. Her lips parted slightly, a soft gasp escaping. Why did you not tell me sooner? Because I was afraid of exactly this moment, I whispered. Afraid of hurting you. Afraid you would not believe me. Afraid it would destroy everything. She sat back, pressing her hand to her forehead. I knew something was off, she said, voice distant. He has been distracted. Distant. But I thought it was work. I thought it was me. It was never you, I said. You did nothing wrong. She was silent for a long time. The air between us felt heavy, suffocating. Finally, she spoke. I do not know what to do. You do not have to decide right now, I said gently. I just needed you to know. I cannot keep pretending. I cannot keep avoiding you. I could not stay silent anymore. She nodded slowly. Her eyes were still glassy, her hands still shaking. But she handed the phone back to me. I need time, she said. I understand. We sat in silence for a while, the wind rustling through the leaves above us. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I knew this moment was not about me. It was about her grief, her betrayal, her disbelief. Her world had shifted, and I had been the one to turn the ground beneath her feet. As I walked home, I felt hollow. Telling the truth had not made me feel lighter. It had not brought relief. It had simply confirmed how deep the damage ran. I did not know what Clara would do next. I did not know if our friendship would survive. But I knew one thing. David no longer had power over me. I had spoken the truth. And now, whatever came next, I was no longer alone. The days after our conversation at the park unfolded like a slow, suffocating unraveling. Clara did not call. She did not text. The silence between us grew thick, a presence in every corner of my apartment. I checked my phone constantly, hoping for even a simple acknowledgement that she had seen the truth and understood what I had risked. But there was nothing. No message. No visit. No relief. 3 days later, she showed up at my door. I opened it and saw her standing there, arms crossed, eyes red. She had clearly been crying. I stepped aside to let her in, but she did not move. I talked to him, she said. Her voice was hollow, distant. I nodded, unsure of what to say. He said you misinterpreted everything, that you were feeling lonely, that maybe you wanted attention. He told me you came on to him, that you tried to seduce him. My heart dropped. A cold, heavy weight settled in my chest. That is not true, I said quietly. She looked down at the floor. He said you saved all those messages to twist the story, that you knew I trusted you, and you used that to get close to him. My mouth went dry. Clara, you know me. You know I would never. I thought I did, she said, her voice breaking. But now I do not know what to think. I stepped forward. You read the messages. You saw how he spoke to me. You saw the pattern. He sent them. I did not reply to most. I never encouraged him. She shook her head. He says you wanted me to leave him so you could have him, that you have always been jealous, that you hated seeing us happy. I could not believe what I was hearing. His manipulation had reached depths I had not even imagined. And Clara, my closest friend, the one I trusted more than anyone, was standing on the edge of doubt. I never wanted him, I said, my voice shaking now. I only ever wanted your friendship. I kept quiet for so long because I did not want to lose you. But he left me no choice. She looked torn, her expression flickering between pain and anger. You should have told me sooner. I was scared, I whispered. I was scared he would do exactly this. Clara turned away, her hand on her forehead. He swears you flirted with him at the wedding, that you touched his arm, laughed at everything he said. He remembers everything. Then his memory is selective, I replied sharply. Because I remember shrinking away from his touch. I remember him making comments when you were not in the room. I remember the way he looked at me. She did not speak. She stood there for another long moment, then walked away without saying goodbye. The door closed behind her like a final verdict. After that, word spread quickly. I did not know who Clara had spoken to, but the air around me changed. Friends who once called me every week stopped responding to messages. Invitations to group gatherings stopped arriving. At work, people avoided eye contact, whispered in corners when I passed by. A colleague who had once been friendly asked me flatly, "Is it true?" and then said nothing more when I denied it. The isolation was suffocating. People did not ask for my side of the story. They just quietly pulled away. Clara had been part of my life for nearly a decade. Our social circles were deeply entwined. Now those circles were closing without me. Every relationship I had built through her was evaporating. David had done more than violate boundaries. He had poisoned the very air around me. I tried to reach out to Clara again, sent her a long message apologizing for the pain, explaining everything once more, attaching timelines and screenshots, hoping that with time she would see the truth. She did not reply. A week later, I saw them together at a local bookstore. They were holding hands. He kissed her cheek, and she leaned into him like nothing had happened. I stood frozen between shelves of novels I could not focus on. My heart felt like it had turned to stone. He looked up and saw me. He smiled. Not a kind smile. Not a smile of pity. A smug, knowing smile that said, "I won." I left immediately, tears stinging my eyes. I barely made it back to my car before the sobs came. My world had shifted under my feet. The person who should have protected me, who should have believed me without question, had chosen to believe a lie because it was easier. Because it hurt less than accepting that the man she loved was capable of something so manipulative, so ugly. The pain of losing Clara was not just about losing a friend. It was about losing history, trust, comfort. It was about feeling suddenly unanchored, like a part of me had been severed. And worst of all, it was about realizing that truth is not always enough. That sometimes, no matter how honest you are, people will choose the lie that makes them feel safer. I stayed home for days, barely speaking to anyone. I deleted social media, turned off my phone, closed the curtains. I cried until I could not cry anymore. Then I sat in silence, trying to remember who I had been before all of this. Eventually, I started writing things down. I documented every interaction again, not because I thought it would change anything, but because it gave me back some control. I wrote about the way he cornered me in that cafe, about the way Clara looked at me like I was a stranger. I wrote about the empty texts, the silence that replaced laughter. I needed to see it on paper, needed to name it to begin healing. I realized I had spent so long managing other people's comfort that I had neglected my own safety. I had tried to protect Clara from the truth, tried to be polite, tried to keep things calm. In doing so, I had left myself vulnerable to exactly this fallout. I decided I would not do that again. Clara had made her choice. Others had made theirs. I could not change that. I could only hold on to what I knew to be true. And as painful as it was, I still believed in the value of truth, even when it cost me everything. In the quiet days that followed the collapse of everything I once held dear, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, surrounded by the silence that once brought comfort but now echoed with loss. The absence of Clara's laughter, the familiar ping of friendly messages, the warmth of shared memories, all of it had vanished like morning mist. For a while, I mourned. I mourned the friendship, the betrayal, the truth that had cost me far more than I ever anticipated. I had told the truth. I had protected myself. And yet, I was the one left to carry the weight of judgment and isolation. But eventually, something began to shift. The silence, once heavy and unbearable, became a space for reflection. I started walking again in the early mornings, before the streets filled with people. I would move through the cool air with my headphones in, not to drown out the world, but to replace it with music that helped me breathe again. Slowly, step by step, I began to remember who I was before I became a target of someone's obsession and a scapegoat in someone else's denial. I started journaling regularly. Every emotion, every memory, every unanswered question found its way onto those pages. Writing helped me untangle the chaos and find meaning in the wreckage. It reminded me that I had survived, that I had made it through one of the most emotionally devastating chapters of my life with my integrity intact. I began reconnecting with parts of myself I had long neglected. I enrolled in an art class at a local community center, something I had always wanted to do but never prioritized. Painting, even when the results were messy, gave me peace. There was something healing about choosing colors, making bold strokes on canvas, expressing emotions without needing to explain them. For the first time in months, I felt free. I also started therapy. At first, I was hesitant. I feared that even there, I might be questioned or blamed. But my therapist listened without judgment. She validated my experience. She helped me understand that what I had endured was not only betrayal, but also emotional trauma. Being objectified by someone I trusted, manipulated and gaslit, then blamed and isolated, it had taken a toll deeper than I could see on the surface. Therapy gave me the tools to rebuild, to set firmer boundaries, to recognize early warning signs, to believe in my own instincts, even when those around me doubted them. I learned to be less apologetic about protecting myself. I learned that no friendship, no relationship, no social circle was worth sacrificing my safety or truth for. I wish I could say Clara came around, that she eventually saw what had been in front of her. But sometimes, the people we love cannot face the truth, even when it is laid bare. She chose to believe his version of the story because it was easier than facing the reality that the man she loved had betrayed her trust in ways she could not accept. And maybe she also felt guilt. Maybe part of her knew and chose not to see it. I will never know. But I stopped waiting for her to return. I stopped waiting for vindication from people who never asked for my side. I focused on becoming whole again, not for them, but for myself. Months passed. Then a year. I found a new job in a different city. A fresh start. New people. A place where my story did not follow me like a shadow. It was not easy, and the fear of being misunderstood lingered for a long time. But I kept moving forward. I built new connections, slowly and carefully. I was more guarded than before, but also more self-assured. I no longer ignored my discomfort to keep the peace. I no longer silenced myself out of fear. One evening, while walking home from work, I passed a small park and sat on a bench beneath a blooming tree. A breeze moved through the leaves, and I closed my eyes for a moment. I realized then that I was no longer angry. I was no longer defined by what had happened. I was not just the woman who lost her best friend or the one who exposed a predator. I was someone who had reclaimed her life. That realization did not erase the pain. It did not make the betrayal any less real. But it gave me power. It reminded me that speaking the truth, even when it cost me everything, had also set me free. I began sharing my story anonymously online, not for revenge, but for solidarity. I wanted others to know that they were not alone. That being objectified, manipulated, or blamed did not mean they were weak. That their voices mattered, even when they trembled. The responses I received were overwhelming. So many people, mostly women, but some men too, wrote to say they had lived through something similar. They told me that my story helped them feel seen, helped them believe they were not crazy, helped them speak up in their own lives. Each message became a small light in the dark, reminding me that there is strength in vulnerability and healing in truth. Looking back, I would not wish what I experienced on anyone. But I am proud of the woman who stood her ground when it would have been easier to stay silent. I am proud of the woman who chose herself, even when the world turned its back. I am proud that I did not let someone else's obsession define me, that I refused to be reduced to a rumor or a lie. My voice was nearly taken from me, but now, it is louder than ever. And if there is one thing I want others to remember, it is this. Trust your instincts, even when the people around you do not. Even when they call you dramatic, or jealous, or mistaken. Even when silence seems safer. You are not wrong for protecting yourself. You are not wrong for speaking the truth. You are not wrong for walking away from people who refuse to see you clearly. Your story matters, and you are not alone.